Hey, how's it going? It's your pal Mike Squires, and this is the Couchers Podcast, episode number 207. 207. And this episode, my guest is Scott Metzger. Scott Metzger is the guitar player for Joe Russo's Almost Dead, the former guitar player for Rana and Wolf. And he is about to put out a solo album called Too Close to Reason. He has recently put out a single called Don't Be a Stranger. It is it's an acoustic album, and it's beautiful, you guys. It's really, really nice. And Scott is a motherfucker of a player. I think that you don't have to be a fan of roots music to appreciate his guitar playing because it embodies because it has taken on so many flavors. I can't recommend it highly enough. There's like some gypsy jazz in there. There's traditional country, like double stoppy sort of Travis Pickens stuff. There's some hints at telly licks on the acoustic. There's it's just really, really, really nice. And it was a real pleasure to talk to him. So I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. We did have a couple of glitchy bits. I think that it will be more obvious, it'll stand out more in the audio version of this podcast because there'll be some sort of like non sequiturs, and then the glitchiness kind of happened early on, and so it sort of set this precedent of awkwardness for us where if one of us held our facial expression, we would think that our computers were, our conversation was frozen when it wasn't, which is really actually pretty funny, to me at least. I don't know what you'll think. I don't care what you think. Go check out Scott's music. It's really great. He's playing some shows in Cambridge, which is Boston. But if you're there, you know that. March 30th. He's playing the 31st at City Winery in the city. He's playing April 1st at the City Winery in DC. And April 2nd at the City Winery Loft in Philly. If you are any of those places, definitely go check him out. I can't believe I missed him at Levon's. He tells a great Levon Helm story in this conversation. Go check out his video for Don't Be a Stranger too. It's great. It's live, and he plays the parts. He tracks them for the video there. It's really cool. Yeah. Again, totally awesome. And he's a closeted metalhead. I love that. Not even closeted, just it doesn't really come out in his playing. So we're going to get into it. I do want to thank folks for supporting us at Patreon. Last week we put out another video for Shakedown by Bob Seger, one of the more underappreciated Bob Seger songs, even though it's his best, it's his highest chart spot, I think, ever. Of course, for a song he didn't write, it sucks. But it's a good tune. It just, had poor production. So we fixed that. Bob, if you heard that, you're the best. You're the greatest. You're an American treasure. So thank you all so much for supporting Couch Riffs at Patreon. Patreon.com/Couch Riffs. It's what makes this happen. It's what makes the videos happen. It just keeps the gears greased here. And so thank you so much. You would be surprised at whatever. You would be shocked. So thank you. I think that if Patreon went away, I don't know that I would be able to do everything anymore. I just couldn't. So I can't thank you enough. I would also like to thank Variety Coffee Roasters in Brooklyn, New York. I drink their coffee every single morning. That is science fact. VarietyCoffeeRoasters.com. Check out their subscription service. You go there, click a couple buttons, asking some questions. how often do you want your coffee? How do you prepare it? And then you get it every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever you want. And you're going to love it. I wouldn't steer you in the wrong direction. I wouldn't try to pawn some bullshit off on you that I wasn't into myself. And I'm into variety. So go follow them on social media. And also we're working on some new, maybe co-branded merch. So look forward to that. Thank you, Variety. You guys are fucking great. We're going to get into the conversation. Don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. God, just imagine, you know? The last bit of the countdown, and so we're recording now.
Okay.
Thank you so much thank you so much for choosing to be on Couch Riffs.
It was my pleasure. It really wasn't a choice at all.
we were just laughing about how even folks, I had dipped my toe into this stuff and was doing, podcasts already, but when the pandemic stuff happened, of course I had to double down. I had to learn how to, I got an aux like you've got, I see there.
Yes, sir.
I had to learn how to, embarrassingly, this is shameful, because I played on people's records. I didn't understand that outputting a track as an audio file wasn't the same as bouncing it. I didn't really understand recording, like sample rate. I didn't I just was like, clicking buttons.
No, listen, we're all in the same boat. I mean, like we were just saying, I bought a whole other laptop thing to run Logic on, and now I can get around Logic well enough, to do it. But it's actually kind of like really informed me about my guitar sound and guitar playing in ways that hadn't occurred to me before having to deal with all this stuff, like just how important compression is, what a huge difference a little bit of delay makes with something sitting in a mix.
Right.
All these things. It's like it's like we've all been forced into this situation and trying to get something musical out of it.
Pre 2020, what was your technical ability as far as recording at home? And
none.
Really?
None. I mean, well, I live in Brooklyn, and there's great studios. There's like 3 great studios all within walking distance of my house, and I know all the guys there, the people who run these places. So I would just go to them. If I had something come in, I've played on plenty of people's records where they get a track done, and then they're like, "Oh, can you put a solo on the outro or whatever?" A featured thing. And up until 2020, it was always that I'd see who was around when I was around, and then I just go over to their studio and kick them back a few bucks or play on one of their tracks or something.
Right.
And we'd hang for a few hours and do it that way. Now I come back to my little closet-sized office here.
Yeah, that ship has sailed, buddy. What neighborhood do you live in?
It's over. I'm in Park Slope.
Oh, yeah, very nice. The last place I was at, we were in Carroll Gardens, which is a hop, skip, and a jump away.
It is just one stop.
Do you see Alex Skolnick walking around over there?
Yeah, yes, he's about a block away from us.
Oh, actually. Yeah, good. He's a sweet man.
He is. Good guy. He's a legend.
For sure. Are you a metal guy?
I was actually, when I first met Alex. That's funny. When I first met Alex, I was like, man, when I was in high school, I was so into Souls of Black, that Testament record, and he was like, man, in high school, he's like, you're making me feel so old.
This is great, because when I listen to your record, I do not hear metal, and I don't hear any metal influence sneaking in at all. And I was curious because there are not a lot of people who come to guitar, at least not a lot of folks my age that I that I know. Of course, there are fucking plenty of people who are like, no, I'm really into, you know, Link Ray, and then that's their in. You know, it's sometimes it's Jimmy Page or something, but a lot of people got excited about guitars in the 80s and 90s because whatever they were seeing on the radio.
Yeah, well, MTV. For me, it was
right.
MTV. I mean, it was, CC DeVille was my guy for a bunch of years. And Mick Mars. I thought that those two guys, because you know why, too? I think that those guys, I heard a little bit of history, at least, in their playing. Like CC DeVille he knows about guitars, He knows
We're
about
going
the
to get
history of the
along
instrument.
great, you and I.
No, but really, you could hear, like, I don't want to say like Eddie Cochran in CC DeVille, but you could hear like old time, you could hear the foundations of rock and roll stuff in there a little bit.
You could at least hear Cheap Trick.
You could definitely hear Cheap Trick, for sure. Yep. And I grew up in Jersey, which, it's a prerequisite. If you're growing up in Jersey in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, you were into metal. You were into hair metal. Some pretty suspicious stuff now looking back. But some of it was great. Some of it holds up.
I think so, yeah. And Mick Mars, too.
Oh, man, I was just listening to Dr. Feelgood the other day, and it's just so good.
It really is.
It holds up so well.
He's a great guitar player. I toured with him.
He's a great guitar player. Did you?
He's amazing. And a sweet man.
Wow.
And a sweet man.
He seems like he'd be a sweet guy. And his choices are so good, like the beginning of Kickstart Your Heart, that whammy bar thing that happens that starts the whole tune is so good. It's just so smart. You're like, what the hell is that sound? And then the palm muted thing comes in, and then you're into it. And I'm going to run a marathon in April, and I'm in the process of making my mix that I'm going to listen to while I run. And Kickstart My Heart, I think, is the opener. As of now, it's the opener. Yeah.
Do you? How far into the playlist are you?
I've got a bunch of hours already made, but it's constantly changing. And it's got everything from Dr. Feelgood to, like, there's Slim Harpo in it. There's Richard Thompson in it. A Tribe Called Quest makes an appearance. It's all over the place.
Let me ask you this: in composing your playlist, I imagine that you're gonna create an excitable arc to get you started, and there's going to be a long period in the middle where you're in sort of a meditative state of sufferance. And are you planning for your to time your playlist to restart at a critical point, or are you planning to end before your playlist and end on a?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm just hoping to finish the thing,
right?
The race, But I think I was checking out the other guests that you've had, and I think that I saw that Nels Cline was on, and right, Nels Cline was on.
Yeah, what a guy!
Yeah. And he made a record with his brother of it's a Coltrane record, Interstellar Spaces. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, he toured that. He went and toured it as a 2-piece. Is his brother a drummer?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be like when I really start freaking out at about mile 18 or 19. Just put it on just as much damage as possible. Just really go all in.
When your mind is already frayed.
Yeah, exactly. Just really, really embrace it. The total breakdown.
Okay, so I have like a general format, but I feel like we've really kicked up. We kind of jumped right to the middle, and I'm pretty excited about it. So clearly, or maybe not clearly, you didn't get into fingerstyle or hybrid picking or anything straight out of the gate?
No, that was not. I mean, I learned how to play guitar. The first things that I learned uh, was playing along to Live at the Fillmore East, the Allman Brothers records.
Wow.
Even though when I was younger, I started playing guitar a little bit later than a lot of people that I know now that are also players. Like I started playing when I was about 15 or 16. And a lot of people I know say they started playing at 8, 9 years old. That was not me.
Just crazy. Have you ever been a teacher?
Again, as of 2020,
Right.
I turned into a teacher full time.
Do you have any 8-year-old students?
I couldn't do it. I had a few.
It's hard.
I had a few parents like get in touch, and over Zoom, it was just It was just really. I think it was frustrating for everybody. I don't think that the kids were enjoying it either. So,
yeah,
I pawned those guys off to somebody else. Those kids off to somebody else.
Yeah, people who don't mind wearing Musketeer ears or whatever.
Yeah, right. Handling kid gloves is not really my style too much. So, so I taught myself to play by, after school, I'd go home and put on the Allman Brothers and just play for hours and hours and hours along with that record, Memory of Elizabeth Reed in particular, that track.
That's a really ambitious choice of something to learn first. Did you have older siblings?
No, I'm an only child.
Is your dad into the Allman Brothers?
Yeah, well, my folks were very into like classic rock stuff, Dylan, a lot of folk rock, but not the Allman Brothers. Am I frozen?
And we're laughing. We're partying again.
All right, we're partying.
So I'm sorry, we cut off, and you said your parents, and that was
my parents. Yeah, they were huge folk rock fans. So I grew up in a house where, my folks took me to see Dylan they would just go to see Bob Dylan whenever he came through town, and they would just bring me. So I saw him 15 or 20 times, like by the time I was, 11 years old or something.
Wow.
Pete Seeger, a lot of folk stuff that wasn't, it wasn't punk rock in execution, but it was punk rock in the spirit of
and the
thing,
message and spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then that led me to, the first concert I ever bought myself a ticket to was to see the Ramones in like 93 at City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey. And I was super into Black Flag, Minor Threat was a big thing for me then. And then that led me to some more involved stuff musically, where then I somehow got from there to Hendrix, and then the Allman Brothers.
This is all before you started playing. This is just you as a music listener.
Yes, exactly.
Let me ask you this. A friend of mine once said to me, the only thing, and this is did you ever go through, once you were a guitar player, a Hendrix or a Stevie Ray Vaughan phase?
Yes, both of those.
A wise man once said to me, the only thing harder than learning Stevie Ray Vaughan licks is unlearning them. Yeah. And I thought, that is, I don't know if he made that up or if someone else gave him that, but truer words have never been spoken.
That's a very smart thing to say. Insightful and like painfully accurate,
It's pretty tough.
It is tough because they're really fun to play, and it sounds good. You always like get a reaction if you play that stuff from people, but there's a time and a place for it, I guess, is a cool way to say it.
Texas is the place.
And
Wh- uh,
toms. Yeah.
exactly. Uh, at what point did you go through that phase?
That puts us at about, I would be in about ninth or 10th grade, let's say, which
Yeah,
is about when I started to play guitar.
right.
Because somebody gave me what it was someone gave me a VHS of Stevie Ray Vaughan live at the El Macambo.
I wore one of those out.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah. And I snapped the tape. I watched it so many times. Um,
S-
and I was just amazed. And then, he closes that show with Voodoo Child. And then I got the recording of that. And then all of a sudden I sort of realized in my mind, Stevie Ray Vaughan's version of it just looked really cute. And the real thing was like this whole other level of like truth, just a whole other, genuineness. I thought Hendrix's version, and then
I
that
swear
started
I'm
a real obsession with
I
Hendrix.
swear I'm not gonna continue sidelining your story, but I'm always interested in asking these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
What what do you think Hendrix would be up to now if he were still alive? Do you think that he would have gone the way of like straight blues man? Do you think he would have gone the way of Jeff Beck? Do you think he would be like operating at Jeff Beck kind of level, or and gone through a Mahavishnu phase, or do you think
It's
he would
hard
be
to.
Claptoning?
I don't think he'd be Claptoning. I definitely don't think that. I mean, there was that. There was a lot of stuff. Well, when he died, there's who knows what's true and what's not, right? But apparently, he was going to get together with Miles Davis, right? They were planning on recording together. And there's a record that they put out while I was in high school called it was just called Blues, Jimi Hendrix Blues, and it was like a
Yeah.
random collection of just like stuff that they found laying around. And there's a version of Born Under a Bad Sign on that recording where he doesn't sing, he just plays. And that's a recording that I learned backwards and forwards and could probably sing the whole thing along with his playing today if I had to. But it's so harmonically not just Claptoning. There's a
Right.
lot of like he's going into like super like he's really laying into like ninths and 11ths, 13ths, and things like that. Um, Definitely moving in a much more jazzy thing. But what do I know? I mean, it had to happen the way it happened, right? He was too good. It was just too much to contain.
It was. Okay, so you
You
get into Fillmore East, and like you're a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and you race home. What are you playing on? Please tell me you had a BC Rich.
No, never had a BC Rich. Um, I had a Les Paul Studio. That
Uh-huh.
was my first guitar. And I still have that guitar. And it weighed a ton. Oh man, it was so heavy
Really?
that it's unplayable now for me. Like to play live because you yeah. And in my town there was nothing to do in my town at all. Like I grew up in this super small town where my public high school. It was a public high school. And I graduated with 36 kids in my class. Um,
Was it the
and
only school in town?
Well, it was the only school like in the region, and most of the kids in the region grew up on farms. Like Future Farmers of America was it at my high school.
This is a
Nobody,
very much like my high school.
is that
Yours
right?
is smaller than mine. Mine was 52. I'm small.
Yeah, my school was painfully small, and nobody wanted to hear about. It's like, oh look, are you experienced? This like no one. It was
Yeah.
it was just me. Um, so yeah, so that became like the thing. It was all consuming. Like I didn't go to parties. I didn't hang out. There were no girlfriends. There was nothing. It was just like I just wanted to play along with in memory of Elizabeth Reed for as many hours a day as I could. Um, And I then learned, I knew I wanted to go to college, and I started to learn that if you wanted to go to college, you could go to study jazz guitar. That was a thing. And I knew from reading, Duane Allman interviews and Hendrix interviews and things like this, like they had mentioned guys like Barney Kessel or Wes Montgomery um, in these interviews. And so I started to get those guys' records, and I was like, okay, well, I'll get it. This seems to be the next step. And it sort of logically was. It was,
Were those easy transitions for you to make as a young kid, excited about the guitar, or was it an acquired taste for you to get in and digest that stuff?
it was very easy. And I think you're right. It's like I was just so excited about the guitar. Like I was just devouring any, like, styles didn't matter. Like all I knew is that I want to go to school. And I wasn't really good at anything else besides guitar. And it was just all that I was thinking about. And so I just very quickly, like, kind of picked it up. Like I started fooling around with learning a couple of standards, like all the things you are, or, the Days of Wine and Roses or something. And just, I went and tried out for the New Jersey regional jazz band. And I got into that after fooling around with the stuff for like a couple of months, and then got into the All-State Jazz Band. It just kind of happened it came pretty naturally.
Yeah. When did you get your first? I mean, I imagine you eventually were like, all right, I need to set this Les Paul aside and get myself a jazz box.
Yeah, no, that never really happened.
No.
I was kind of doing it all through when I got to, so I eventually I went to college for jazz guitar in New Jersey. And I ended up getting a Guild Starfire like the second year that I was there, which isn't really a jazz box, but it's like a kind of like a 335-ish.
They're cool.
They are cool.
I like the less conventional stuff.
Yeah, me too. I mean, my favorite jazz guitar player now, or one of them, is a guy named Ed Bickert, who played on a totally stock Telecaster. And if you close your eyes and listen to him, it sounds like he's playing on a Gibson jazz box.
Right.
But
it's it's all about these things. That's what they tell me.
That's what they say.
I'm going to keep buying stuff though, because it makes me feel better.
It's just fun, right? It's just fun to buy stuff.
Fun. So how long did you stay in school?
I went the distance. I got the degree. I did it. It took about 7 years. I think it took about 7 years, though, because in the third year, I started touring kind of a lot. But I had such great teachers. I mean, I had amazing teachers at that school. I studied with a guy named Gene Bertoncini, who just incredible. I studied with a guy named Vic Juris. These guys are all like real, like straight ahead jazz masters. Paul Myers was another guy I studied with. I was very lucky. And I kind of did what they told me to. I tried to. I never fully committed to the jazz thing. I think that I sort of, in the back of my head, was always like, I'm here because I want to go to school, but I'm not. When I got to college, I realized I was surrounded by people that had been listening to Kind of Blue and A Love Supreme since they were like toddlers. I was like, I'm not right. That,
Did these instructors have a tolerance for your folly with other genres?
They were into it. They encouraged it. Yeah. But it was definitely sort of controversial. Like every semester they would do these things called juries, which is so intimidating, just sounding, It's like, it's time for your jury. Oh my God. Where you would go and you would play with the faculty in a small room, and it was just you guys playing, and they would give you like their feedback.
So the jury was faculty, not your peers.
Correct.
Oof.
Hardcore. This school was no joke. I mean, it was right outside of New York City, and it was not a joke. And one of the juries, I decided, they would let you pick what you wanted to play, and one of them, I decided I wanted to do Red House, and sing it. And they were like, I mean, I can't tell you how off the mark that was from what anybody else was doing. It was like coming from a different planet. Nobody was doing like an electric blues, like Albert King style blues thing or something.
Right.
And they were all super into it and super supportive. And I remember one of the guys said, it's like, it's just so clear that this is so genuinely where you're coming from that it's hard to argue with this. He's like, I wouldn't have picked it for you to do it, and I wouldn't have expected you to do it, but it's so clearly you, which was really one of the best music lessons I've ever gotten. Him saying that it was, like, because now that I'm older and now that I do this for a living and have been doing it for a living for like 20 years, you kind of get a sense. You can see somebody when they play, and you just sort of know if you're really seeing them or if they're just up there really trying hard to like do what they think they're supposed to be doing. There's a huge difference there.
That's my style. What are you, my shrink?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. You'll get my bill after this interview, but I'll send you the invoice.
Okay, cool. You said that your third year in, you started gigging. I want to back up a little bit. Before school, did you have a band other than the regional jazz band that you were playing with?
About the first or second year of school, of college, I started a band with friends back home in a different part of Jersey, even though I was going to school in North Jersey, but I grew up in Central Jersey, and I started a band with a few guys that I met over a summer in Central Jersey. And it was a 3-piece instrumental, kind of experimental noise band, guitar, bass, and drums called F-Hole.
Nice.
And it was sort of, it's hard to describe. It's sort of like maybe if people heard it, it would be like if Medeski, Martin, and Wood were not quite as groundbreaking and had a guitar player instead of an organ guy.
Right. Well, that sounds great to me.
Well, it was really cool, and I'm very proud of it. I actually heard one of the we made 2 records, and I actually listened to one of them about a year ago for the first time in like 15 years, and it actually kind of holds up. I was like, no, this was a thing. It was a concept. We did what we came there to do with that group, for sure.
How many years ago was that?
Oh, I mean, that was 99 or 2000.
So we're talking 23 years ago.
Oof.
How
it hurts
when you listen back to that?
Mm-hmm.
I know time waits for no man. When you listen back to that, what do you hear in your playing that still is hanging on, and what do you feel like has left you?
Well, I that's a good question. I mean, I guess I heard sort of the commitment to an idea. Like I wouldn't leave an idea until it was pretty well explored. I'd kind of try and look at it from a few different angles, maybe rhythmically or in a tone way. Trying to really get to the bottom of a thing. But what I definitely heard is that I have moved on. I think I still do that. And what I've heard that I moved on from was that there were just so many ideas. There were way, way, way too many ideas. Everything was like a run-on sentence.
Were they improvised compositions or fully composed?
They were like little ideas.
Yeah.
They were small ideas that would then be stretched out and improvised on a lot.
But this is what you're pretty well known for. For being able to do that with great skill.
Yeah, that becomes what I'm doing now. You know, that was the first. Yeah, it is cool. I mean, it's like really where I started out. I'm still kind of doing it, you
Yeah.
know, with different people and in a different context. But it's conceptually, it's still the same thing.
It's not Souls of Black, though.
No, that would be nice. That would have been nice.
Um, I'll press you. I'll press you more about your next your next solo record to be a
Yeah,
metal record later. Just an
it's not out
instrumental
of the
shred record. Look out, Mike Varney.
Stranger Things. I don't know who that is, but Stranger Things.
Mike Varney was the Shrapnel Records guy. He put out,
Oh,
you know, he put out Racer X and Tony McAlpine and Greg Howe.
oh
Tons of
wow.
shred guitar.
I haven't. It's funny. Like the scene that I'm in now, I guess like most people would call it jam band. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. I'm playing the jam band scene, and there's like a lot of shreddy guys in that scene. Like they're like, you're like, oh, who are you into? And like the first guy they say, it's like George Lynch or something. And I mean, I just am not
Really?
that part of me. Yeah, for real. Like if you talk to the guys in a lot of those groups, you don't even have to talk to them. You can hear it in what they do. And I'm just not, somehow that did not make it through for me. That is
Right.
not the thing that persisted in my
Um,
thing.
so your solo record is my introduction to your music, which I think is great because
Thanks.
I intend to go backwards and find other recordings of yours. But I was so happy when I started listening to it. There's so much depth there. Nothing. It all feels natural and effortless, and with that much depth, that's a tall order. I mean, I hear folk, jazz, gypsy, um, uh, and some like sort of cinematic-y, surfy, spy music almost. Talk to me. When did this stuff
I
start?
mean,
When did this
wait,
stuff start sneaking in?
well, I mean, you're nailing it. The whole checklist. Um, this is, I mean, there's not a whole lot to check out before this. This is the first record that I've ever done under my own name. Um, there's, I had a trio before this that I was a part of called Wolf with an exclamation point, and that that band was named after Harvey Keitel's character in Pulp Fiction, and everyone said that it just sounded like a Tarantino soundtrack. You know, the very surfy, uh,
Right.
reverb drenched Telecaster stuff.
I'm sending the wolf.
So that's, oh man, just watched that the other day. So it totally holds up.
It really does.
But this record, Too Close to Reason, is completely 150% like a pandemic silver lining for me. Um, I mean, long story short, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was losing all of my work. You know, it was like a nightmare at the beginning of the pandemic, just like every other musician. Um, and my fiance, who tours with The Who, was losing all of her work as well. So it was tough times here in Brooklyn, March 2020. Uh,
Your
and,
fiance is a musician as well.
yes, she plays violin, Katie Jacoby, and she does with the Who, when the Who tours, she does the Big Bob O'Reilly feature. You know, the ultimate violin rock and roll feature.
I had Lauren on a Couchers video
Oh,
that's yet to appear, but it's coming.
great dude, super talented too.
Yeah. Yeah. What a gig! How many times have you seen the Who play? Sorry, I'm
Forget it.
derailing the
No,
story
please.
again.
No, you're not. This is better. I've seen them
Uh-oh,
do
are
the
we
thing
frozen?
like, oh shit.
Ah, crappity crap.
I'm here.
Okay.
Are you here?
I'm here. As far as you know,
As far as I know.
I'm macro dosed before. Am I here? I don't know.
Macro dose, not micro dose, but macro
That's
dose.
right.
Nice.
Have you gone and seen the Who a bunch? Have you
Oh
seen
yeah,
them a
of course.
bunch?
I saw them like 6 times when they were touring.
Shit, that's one band I've never seen.
Yeah, I mean, they're up there. They're still doing it. You know, Townsend will like do the windmill thing, and they sound great. It's awesome. And they're another band that I didn't go through a huge phase with ever really, but seeing them as many times as I have now, every time they start a song, it's like, fuck, man, they wrote that song too, right? That song rules. And that song rules. And then before you know it, you're through a 2 hour and change show, and you're like, God, all of these songs are awesome.
A lot of my friends in high school in their early 20s went through a Who phase and saw them when they toured in the 80s or whatever. And I never did. I never got it because there wasn't a lot of guitar heroics probably. But in the 90s, they put out a compilation thing that was like, I don't know, 4 or 6 discs or something. And I fell in love with their 60s stuff hard. Like their hard, their like mod rock stuff. Oh,
It's so badass.
Unbelievable.
And in fact, I just loved, I'm totally with you. And I always sort of thought of the Who as like my rhythm section buddies were super down with the Who, but not a lot of my guitar friends. So the same thing. But I think it's kind of, the more that I think about it, it was kind of the most punk rock move of him to not go after it. Because he's coming up, he's probably like, went to see Clapton and Hendrix, and he's like, right, they've got that covered. I'll be like the harmony guy and like slash chords and all this stuff. He was just like, he stays in his lane totally.
And he's great at it.
He's amazing at it. He's better. There's no way. I feel like when I was younger, I feel like he's a great example of somebody that I saw and I was like, that doesn't look so hard. And now, now when I see him, I'm like, God, that was like truly amazing.
It's a craft. It's
playing. It's an art.
He's an artist.
He's an artist for sure, and a novelist.
Right. Okay. So sorry, we got derailed.
Fine.
When did the more, for lack of a better term, we'll call them exotic influences, when did they come creeping in? Like, I guess some of them are forms of folk music.
Yeah.
Like the gypsy stuff, but was that stuff playing in your home as a kid?
No, not particularly. That was really, I think, a product of me reading a lot of interviews about people that I looked up to. And pretty much in every interview, somebody would say Django Reinhardt. And then following that backwards and being like, who the fuck is this guy that everyone is talking about? Django Reinhardt.
This guy with 2 fingers.
With only 2 fingers, right. And then becoming sort of like it turning into like a total obsession of, the gypsy jazz thing, of just going on a deep dive into that. That was a good phase. And also, there was also Mark Rebo did Los Cubanos Prestizos in the 90s, which which was like a Cuban record. It was a covers record, actually. He didn't write any of that stuff. It was all covers of a Cuban composer that he had studied with when he was young, and that record really floored me, like a lot of people that I know. And that was an important one.
Did you go through a John Zorn phase? Did you
Totally.
get? Yeah.
It's still going through it.
Yeah.
I went to the Vanguard just last year and saw him play with Julian Lage playing guitar, and Kenny Wolson was playing drums. Um, but yeah, absolutely. The Zorn, the noise jazz thing at the Knitting Factory back in the day, which was when I kind of first moved to the city. The Knitting Factory was it was on Leonard Street, and it was still a thing going on. And I was down there all the time hanging out, seeing like Phil Frizell, Naked City. I got to see that once, which was John Zorn's project with Frizell and Joey Barron and Mike Patton from what's that band? Faith No More. So I saw all that, and then I also and I'm also super into the Boredoms, which is like a Japanese noise rock band. Yeah. That's super heavy. Do you know that band?
They're insane.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it happens.
Yeah, right. It's a good way to say it.
I don't understand how it happens. There are a few bands that make music, and I have no comprehension of how they do it. The Boredoms is one of those bands. Another Japanese band called Melt Banana is one of those bands. Mm-hmm. How in the hell this happens, I don't know. There are other sort of hardcore, modern hardcore bands that are that do insane things, odd meters. Well, maybe we're back.
Are we back?
Maybe.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, do you keep up with any of the modern guitar, heroes as far as like this newest generation of players?
Not particularly. I don't think I know enough to like talk about younger, like up and coming.
Yeah, I don't either. I was hoping to learn something.
I got nothing. I got everybody. It makes me feel old, like when I hear people like be like, "Oh, this is like the new thing," and I put it on. It's like, that's not music, When I was young, when I was young, we had Poison and Skid Row,
We had Michelangelo.
Yeah. But I mean, I listen to people that are, modern or whatever, that are around,
right?
For sure. But
was there any part of you? So when did you decide? All right, well, this isn't going to be over anytime soon. We thought it was going to be over in a month or 6 weeks, right? At what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to make a record? And was there any point where you considered recording it at home?
Right. Well, it was in the summertime when it was clear that the whole thing was not going to be a couple of months,
Yeah.
And the shows that had been rescheduled for the fall were then being like rescheduled again. It was like, okay, we are like in it for a while. And I had like a total, I just had a real moment one day where I was like, man, it was just hard to wrap my head around what was happening and the reality of how long this was going to be. So I said, okay, fuck it. If I'm going to be stuck inside, I'm going to try and make it as comfortable as possible. So I've always sort of dreamed of owning an old Martin vintage acoustic.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if this isn't a good excuse to do it, then I don't know what the hell would be. So I said, all right, I'm just going to do it. I had been putting some money aside, like we said, to buy something fun. And I got in touch with Carter Vintage Guitars in Nashville.
Yeah.
And they had on their website, they had a 1957 000 18 Martin. It's like a parlor size guitar.
Yeah.
And I called them up and I said, I'd like to talk to you about making that my guitar, And the guy said, oh man, you missed it by a day. Like we just sold it. And we sold it so recently that it hasn't even been taken down off the website yet. But the guy said, but if you're interested in a 00018, I've got a 1955 that just came in today and hasn't even been listed yet. And it's beat to hell, but it's like one of the best playing ones we've ever had in here, and it sounds incredible. So
sorry, you were telling a story about how you were hot for this 57 Martin.
Right. So how the record, the whole reason we're talking, how the record came about was, yes, I saw a 57 00018 on the Carter Guitars website. And I got in touch with them. I called them. I said, that's the guitar I want. And they said, oh, we just sold it. It sold yesterday, and we haven't even taken it off the website yet. But, it's gone. So
tough shit, kid.
So, yeah, just, that's life. 2021, what are you going to do? And the guy said, but if you're not a collector and you're not worried about something being in immaculate condition, we have a 55 that just came in yesterday, and it's the staff's favorite 00018 that's ever come through the door, and it hasn't even been listed yet. And I could care less about the condition of it, how a guitar looks. I'm not buying these things to be a collector. So he took some pictures of it, and it looked great. It looked amazing. These things look even better banged up. An old acoustic guitar, you don't want it in immaculate condition.
How killer is Trigger?
The what?
How great is Trigger? Isn't that Willie's guitar?
Trigger, yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Willie's. So he sent me some pictures, and I said, it looks great. And he sent me a couple of videos of him strumming some like G's, D's, and C's on it, and it sounded as good as an acoustic guitar can through an iPhone. And I've never bought a guitar. I've never even bought a guitar like online before.
Really?
Let alone an acoustic guitar. And I've always bought guitars that friends have built or bought something in a shop where I could, try it. But 2021 was a year of firsts. So I just said, fuck it. I said, I'll take it. And, gave them the info, bought the thing. It showed up a few days later, and I took it out of the case. I shit you not. It was perfectly in tune out of the box. And then the songs that became this record just kind of started falling out of the thing. I was just sitting around for days and days playing it. And every time I picked it up, I would kind of play something new that I kind of thought, that doesn't suck. That could be that could be a song. That could be worked into a thing. And that's pretty much the record. That's how the record was written in a couple of days. And 90% of the record, I'd say, is recorded on that guitar.
You say that the record was written in a matter of days?
Yeah, well, I'd say like the ideas came. And then I spent some time flushing out demos and whatnot, just like on an iPad, on GarageBand in the back.
Sure.
Coming up with arrangements and stuff. And
had you owned a really nice acoustic guitar before, or was that a first?
It was the first vintage acoustic I've ever owned. I have another Martin that's very nice, but it's like a 2010 or 2009,
Mm-hmm.
not quite vintage, nothing like 1955.
Right.
And I've played a million nice vintage guitars on sessions at different people's studios and stuff, and it's always been on the list of, something, the bucket list.
Yeah.
And last year seemed like as good a time as any to do it.
So you would say that guitar was integral to the album.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in a way, I'm sure that you've had this experience where you get a new guitar or you play on somebody else's guitar and all of a sudden you're playing shit that you've never played before, or it's bringing stuff out of you that is new or unfamiliar. And that I just got lucky. That was this guitar to the nines for me. And I would definitely say the guitar is integral to the record. I don't think the record would have. Oh man, I don't think the record would have happened.
I just held my breath and stopped, so it looked like I froze. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, and instead I caused a disturbance.
No, you're good. You're good. So the record, I mean, in a way, the record, the guitar is the album is about the guitar in a way.
Do you name your guitars?
No.
Yeah, no. I don't do it either.
I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, then what happens if it breaks?
It's too much pressure.
I'm not going to name a guitar.
Not for me.
I saw that rack behind you when you were in the other room, and I didn't see any acoustic guitars back there. And so I have to assume that most of your guitars are electrics. And most of them are, I think, appeared to be Tellys.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I only have 6 or 7 guitars total, which is more than enough. And yes, in about 2010, I bought a Telecaster. I was a Les Paul man up until that point, and went through a phase where I got super into like Richard Thompson and Roy Buchanan, and there's a guy here in town named Jim Campolongo who's a real Telecaster. Like he's a master of the thing. He's got his own vocabulary on the instrument, and I decided I was going to buy a Telecaster, and there's just been no going back since. It's been nothing but Telecasters.
Did you have some
4 of them now?
Did you have some of that Tele vocabulary? There's like, it's funny. There's like a Telecaster vocabulary, right? There is.
It's its own thing.
There are these very specific double stops. It's like, all right, well, if you have a Tele, you better at least know those things.
Right. It's like it's like a Telecaster like almost comes with a manual, that it's like the 10 commandments of the thing, and you have to know certain things because they just sound so good. Like if you play certain things on a Les Paul, it sounds one way, and then if you play the same thing on a Telecaster, you're like, oh well, that's how it's supposed to sound.
Are there other guitars that? I mean, there's like a Les Paul into a Marshall, and people want to hear that, and it sounds fucking great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are there? I mean, can you think of another instrument where it's like, I mean, maybe a 335. All right, you have a 335. You better know, you better know a couple of expensive chords, and you better be able to rip some like jazz fusion or something. But
to me, the Telecaster is the most specific example of that, and it's just so damn versatile too. I mean, you can get, if you know what you're doing, you can make a Telecaster sound like a jazz box very, very, very convincingly.
I think it's the greatest guitar ever made.
It's a bold statement, but I'm in agreement.
If you could only have
I
one
agree.
guitar for the rest of your life, what would it be?
There's no doubt. For me, it'd be a Telecaster.
See, because I, we're gonna get along. I knew it.
It'll work. It's going to work out.
Uh,
I also got no time for like all the knobs and stuff. Like I've I've done, I've hung out with Nels uh, Klein, and we've talked. And he's obviously a jazz master guy, and I've just said, man, all the knobs and the switches, and stuff, it makes me way too nervous. Like so much could go wrong. It looks to me like on those things. Telecaster, it's like a piece of wood, two knobs, one switch. You can either play the thing or you can't. I like that.
he seems to really enjoy to be in command of all of the controls as well, and
Yeah,
he's a commander.
he is, and I think it's like a total personality thing too. Like he's like into like some people just like want to have a lot of options and like explore all the options and get everything out. So to me, it's like just like I start. I don't know. I've played a jazz master a few times, and I've always felt like I'm like about to like break out in a rash or something. It's just like, oh God, what the hell is all this stuff? Jesus.
Are you do you have any Strats? Have you ever been a
No,
Strat person?
no, never.
Oh God, see, we're like
No.
fuck Strats. Sorry, no, but listen, I never had a telly because I didn't understand that those bridge pickups were completely, they're not the same. I was just like, oh yeah, telly's just the same thing, just looks different,
Mhm,
has one less pickup, so I don't want one because I don't I've had a couple Strats and didn't like them, so done.
mhm.
And but I was a dingaling, you see, Scott. I was a dingaling. Did you
Oh
know? Did you?
no!
When did you know this? When did you know that they were absolutely completely different instruments? You're a lot smarter than I am, clearly.
What the Telecaster and the Stratocaster? You mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the Telly thing. It's just its own thing. Like what we were talking about. Like if you tried to play Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff on a Telecaster, I think it just sounds silly. You know. But on a Strat, it sounds good. And there's people that play Strats. I'm not. I'm not anti-Strat. But for me, I'm very anti-Strat. Like I have
Right.
no interest in. I'm never like, oh, what does this Strat feel and sound like? I don't do that.
Um. So
You know?
what spurred that move?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just time for a change. I went through a lot of phases around that time. Went through a lot of changes in my life around that time, where one band that I toured with in my 20s was kind of wrapping up, and I was going on to what I didn't know what would be the next phase or anything, and I just needed like some sort of major change. And
Something to throw your focus into. See.
yeah, exactly, something, something to get into, and also um, Richard Thompson, who actually played Strats in the 80s, but he always seemed like a Telecaster guy to me.
Right.
You
Well, he
know, he was
plays it like it's a telly, right?
That's what I'm saying, right? Exactly.
How does Pete Townsend get away with playing those Strats? I feel like he should be fined.
It's well, what did he? I mean, it works for him. He finds a way.
I think he should be taxed.
I'm I'm too close to the whole thing to say.
I know. It's okay. You don't have, it's just so strange to see. But the
Mm,
thing is when he plays it, it still sounds like him and doesn't sound goofy. It
no, not at
sounds
all. It sounds legit, and I think that he's playing like. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think I may have even seen some like lace sensor pickups on
yeah.
stage that he's playing, and like those things are like a red flag on fire to me. But he's fucking Pete Townsend, man. He makes it.
Yeah, what
He
the
makes
fuck
it
do I
work.
know?
Yeah, and here we are, just trying to get our Wi-Fi to work. Fuck. Couple of experts over here.
That's right. That's right. Uh, how many electric instruments made it to the record?
One. A
One.
pedal steel.
Yeah.
That I play that I attempt to play from time to time, and it's on one song. That's it.
Do you own a pedal?
I do.
And you say you attempt to play, but there's nothing that sounds suspect on this record.
Well, that's good. It got by you. No, I mean, I can play it. I can play it when there's no pressure and when I'm comfortable. I can get around it, but I'm certainly not competent on the thing.
But what are you measuring your skills against?
Right, exactly. I mean, there's guys here in the city that are would
right
laugh me out of the room, if I said that I was a pedal steel player. But I like it and it's fun, and I actually think it's good for the overall musicality to always have a challenge. Something that puts you in your place a little bit, and that certainly does that for me.
When did you pick up the steel?
6 years ago, maybe.
What was the learning curve for you with that thing?
Man.
Did you have anyone? I mean, you picked it up in the internet age, so you had a leg up there.
Yes.
Can you imagine picking it up like when you picked up the guitar?
No. I mean, I don't know where you would even begin. I mean, there's one sort of like holy grail book for learning pedal steel. That's just called the pedal steel guitar, I think. And everybody recommended that I get it. And when I got that thing, I was also subbing in Shooter Jennings' band, which I don't know if you know him, but he's Waylon Jennings' son.
Yeah.
So it's like real outlaw country stuff. And the pedal steel player in that band, John Grayboff, was really helpful and very gently, kind of, like, yeah, man, sounds good. Keep it up. I'm sure that it was, but he was being nice.
So wait a minute. When were you subbing? And so you just got this pedal steel, and then they were like, fuck it, call Scott.
Whoa, no. I wasn't subbing on pedal steel. I was subbing on Telecaster.
Gotcha. I was like, wait a minute.
No.
How does this happen? Okay.
That would never happen. That will never happen. I only got the steel because I was doing a lot of session work in New York City at the time, and being able to show up with a steel and put it through a bunch of delay and kind of get this atmospheric thing going was really in demand. And people were, I mean, I think, people were hiring me for that. The fact that I could give them that flavor of sound too.
I saw the worst thing while I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram the other day. Mm-hmm. Do you have any guess as to what it is?
There's so many awful things you could find on Instagram.
But I don't know. This awful thing pertains to what we're talking about.
Okay. I got nothing. I haven't seen any good pedal steel content lately.
Well, we're all familiar with drum software at this point, and it's getting quite good, and it's great for making demos and whatnot, right? But you don't, unless you're some kind of metal band where it's just sort of like you don't want it on your record, right?
Right.
A company came out with a bass sim. You play your riff, and it gives you a bass line, which I don't like it. I feel like we're getting into Skynet territory.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
This is the thing. Pedal Steel app.
A pedal steel app.
How does that make you feel?
So you got to break it down for me. So you give them a progression,
I
and then
guess so.
and that's how it. I don't like any of it. I'm highly
No,
suspect of all of it.
I don't like it too.
No way, man. It's just so lame. It's all just like, all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, I'm not into it.
Well, earlier I wanted to ask you, and then we were having some technical glitches. You were talking about a lot about reading interviews, which is something that I did a lot of, and I think that a lot of people used to do because for a number of reasons. They had greater attention span. They also felt like, oh, I'm going to read this interview and then I'll know something. I'm not going to just look at the headline and be an expert. So you were talking about going backward and learning about like Barney Kessel and how do you what's your perception of how it is to pick up the guitar now versus 30 years ago?
Man, I don't know. I think it would be I think it's an entirely different thing, because there's just so much information. Like I feel like that I'm, as a 44-year-old guy, I'm totally overwhelmed with the amount of options and information and stuff on the internet. I can't imagine if I was just, there's no time to absorb everything that you have access to anymore, right?
Right.
Like,
I mean, did you subscribe to Guitar Player or?
I don't know if I subscribed to it. I don't remember, but I definitely had issues around the house. But if you were lucky enough to get your hands on one of those things, you like read it front to back and digested all of it, like the same way that we were saying, the Stevie Ray Vaughan VHS. It's like the same thing. It's like if you had it, it was like this really special thing that you didn't want to lose. And when the tape broke, you were like really upset about it because that's it.
Yeah.
Right. But, now, I don't know, apps, there's just too much stuff. Like, I don't think that people absorb. I don't know for sure because I'm not seeing it firsthand or whatever, but I would just think that it would be much more difficult to really, really absorb like a record, say. Because there's just so many options and tutorials, this, that, the other online.
Right. At any point since 2020, were you ever tempted to be a gear demo person?
Not for 1 second.
Good for you.
No.
Thank you for your service.
No, it's not me. It's just, it wouldn't be right. It would be awkward for everybody, I think.
How do you, I know that everything is super in the air and who knows anything.
Yeah.
But what are your plans to support the record? Are you going to try to get out and tour?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's some dates on the books already that have been announced in the Northeast. And I actually just got word that they're all pretty much they're selling very well.
Great.
Which is nice. Who knows if, fingers crossed that the gigs will happen. But yeah, sure. I mean, the idea is definitely to get out there and, because I want to see where the tunes go as well. I've done enough gigs to know that a song starts out one way in the studio and then it evolves, and changes. And I'd love to see where this material, leads us.
Will your performances be solo or
No,
will you be accompanied?
I'll be accompanied with a guy named Simon Kafka on second guitar, who's a great guitarist here in Brooklyn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He'll be on acoustic, or is he going to be playing the pedal steel?
Nope.
2 acoustic guitars.
2 acoustic guitars. That's it. It's a nice sound. Turns out It's like
Go figure.
I've made the record. I don't listen to stuff that I've recorded very often, but I was having coffee the other morning, sitting here looking out in my my little courtyard here between buildings in Brooklyn, and I was like, man, it's just such a nice aesthetic, right? Like the sound is so great. It's two acoustic guitars. It sounds so civilized.
It does sound civilized.
Maybe too civilized. I don't know.
Do you think that moving forward you'll continue making acoustic music, or do you think you want to make a solo electric record?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was just talking about this, that I feel like because of the circumstances, I kind of made what should be my third or fourth record under my own name is the first one, because
Right.
this one doesn't hit you over the head at all. It doesn't like come in hot in any way, shape, or form. Or maybe I'm
I
wrong. Maybe you
mean,
disagree.
because I was unfamiliar with your playing before, I mean, I was in from the word go.
Oh, that's great. It's Well, I guess what I mean, I don't know. It just feels like a third or fourth record to me, like somebody who would have an established thing, and then they'd be like, "Oh, now I'm going to make my exploratory acoustic record. I'm going to explore
Right.
the acoustic side."
So
But
you
because
think maybe you're going to scare some folks away that you pick up with this record?
I don't know. I could just see some people being like, "This is a little light in the loafers for me, for sure." But that's okay, too. I stand behind it. I think it's cool, and I think it does something that's uniquely its own. You know.
I think so. I think it's beautiful. I think your shows, they're city winery shows.
Yes. Yep. In Boston, New York, DC, and Philly, and there's going to be more announced.
Think you come up this way? Hey, you think you play Levon Helm's place?
I just did play Levon Helm's place. That's
What?
funny. I did a solo set opening for my friend Marco Benevento, who's a great keyboard player who lives up there.
When?
Oh, that was it was in December,
Oh,
mid-December. It was right before everything got crazy again.
well, shoot.
Well, shoot.
Shoot. I wish I live 25 minutes, or no, about 40 minutes away from there. So
What a great room.
oh my God.
Special.
It is an amazing place.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple shows there, and I'm, after the first one, I was like, I really want to play a show here. And then I saw the second show, and I was like, I don't rate to play a show here.
Yeah. Well, that place is amazing. I was talking to the guys who work there, and they were telling me that everything in that barn is made out of wood. Like even what would normally be like nails or everything. There's no metal involved in the building at all.
Really?
And they did. You don't say. Yeah, and they did that specifically with sound in mind. They were like, everything's got to be wood.
Levon was like, I don't want any damn nails in my studio because of the resonance.
Yeah, he sure was.
That's insane.
Isn't that cool? I thought that was
it
really...
sounds beautiful. I love everything about it, except for the poles that hold up the front mezzanine. They can be a nuisance if you're sitting in the wrong place.
I bet they could.
Yeah, but what an awesome place.
That was that was a real highlight.
Was that was solo or?
That was solo, yeah, but a little bit of this material, yeah. And that was the best part of that gig was that I was able to tell my Levon Helm story.
Well, let's have it.
I'll give you the cliff notes.
Nice lead in.
Right? I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it. So when I first moved to the city, it was in about 2000, 2001. And I got a job working at BB King's nightclub, which was right on 42nd between 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
And my first job, I moved here in the winter in like February, and my first job was handing out flyers in Times Square to tourists. It was like the most thankless job you could possibly imagine in February, in Times Square. It was brutal. But eventually, after not too long, they moved me inside at my request to work on the sound. I like ran cables and set up mics and things like this, and eventually ended up working my way up to doing monitors for some things. But I worked some incredible shows there. I worked like Aretha Franklin. I worked BB King a bunch of times. I mean, the list was like ZZ Top, which was so cool to see, check out their gear. And then some like, they would have some really heavy stuff come through too. Like Sepultura came through and Soulfly. And Soulfly was the best show I saw there, hands down.
Really?
Those guys were fucking unbelievable. Like the rhythm section of that band it was just like, you couldn't believe it that they could keep that up for 2 hours and be so tight, like so tight. But, and so I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and off and on when I was in town. And one time on the schedule, I saw Hubert Sumlin, who was Howlin' Wolf's lead guitarist, was coming and playing with Levon Helm on drums. Wow. And this was right after Levon had taken a break, and I think he was dealing with throat issues. So I said to my boss, I was like, I got to work that show. Like I'm working that show, because I was a huge band fan, and still am. And he said, okay, you got it. So they showed up. Levon Helm showed up in his Subaru, like on 42nd Street. I went upstairs. I helped him get his drums out of his Subaru. We got him downstairs to the gig, set him up, make sure he was comfortable. And they played, and it was great. It's like just as great as you would think it was. And at the end of the night, I got his stuff back up to his Subaru on 42nd Street, and we're saying goodnight. And in the 5 years that I worked there, nobody ever gave me a tip. Nobody, except for Levon Helm. He was the one guy who ever tipped me on that job. And at the end of the night, he's getting into his car and he's like, here you go, son. You get yourself a cup of coffee or something. And he slipped me $50, which is
$50.
That's what I'm saying. And
that's a hell of a cup of coffee.
I know. I mean, how cool! You just couldn't get any cooler than that. And I was just the guy who was like running cables, kind of just making sure that he was, like, you need anything, I didn't have an integral role in the night at all, But
what a dude!
Yeah. And again, like, that's something that I think about all the time when I'm on gigs. It's like, I've seen so many venues, and I always think about the local crew and like how important it is to like set up a good thing. I'm not giving everybody $50, but the lesson.
Every one of those people showed up to the gig. It's their job. They showed up to the gig, and they're doing something to make your show happen.
Yeah.
So, if you are an unfavorable character, it's not really likely that things are going to really go great for you at that show.
Yeah, it's just a bad vibe, and it's anyway. That's my Levon Helm story.
That's incredible.
It's a good one.
Huh.
I've got some good ones, man. I've got a few really unbelievable stories. That's up there. That's a good one.
You've got one better than that?
I've got one better than that.
Will you share?
Yeah, of course. So right around the same era, I guess this was like about 2000. I was playing in Florida, and was playing at a festival, and James Brown was scheduled to headline. And we're playing, and we're in the middle of the set, doing our thing, and the bass player comes over to me, and he's like, I can't believe this shit is happening. Like, this is the most unbelievable thing. And I said, I didn't know what he was talking about. And guy, bass player, comes over to me a few minutes later. He's like, man, he's still fucking going. I can't believe this. And I was like, I didn't know what he was talking about. And I'm like, what? It's loud and confusing. We get done playing, and Andrew, the bass player, comes over and he's like, man, that was the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, you missed it. He's like, I can't believe you missed it. He's like, James Brown was on the side, like in the wings of the stage. We're just off the stage, busting like full on Sex Machine dance moves to our set. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? There's no way that was happening. And I missed it. Like, what? I was so bummed I missed it. I mean, this really was. Do you think
that if you wouldn't have missed it, you would have fucked up?
Well, it would have been. It would be nice to have the mental image, I have to say, of like James Brown like doing a split or some shit. But the story goes on. So I'm getting my stuff. We're getting our stuff off the stage, and a guy in like a 3-piece suit, and we're in Florida at like this festival in the middle of the fucking swamp, Guy's in the 3-piece suit and comes up to me and he goes, "You're the guy who was just playing guitar, right?" And I was like, yeah. And he's like, "Well, Mr. Brown wants to meet you." Yeah, I said, "Oh my God, what the fuck?" So I got the 3 guys together in the band, and I was like, "I think we're gonna meet James Brown," And I said, "All right." So we follow this guy in the 3-piece suit back through all the like backstage tents, back to sort of like the last one. And he brings us in, and James Brown and his wife are sitting there with like their backs to us, so we just see their profiles. That's their heads.
Yeah.
And the guy goes around and he leans over something. He leans over him and he like kind of says something to him. And then the voice of James Brown just comes out, and he's like, "Where the guitar player at?"
Yes.
Yeah. And so I walked around and I said, "Oh, that's me." And it's just run up, it's James Brown sitting there. And I said, "Oh, that was me." And he's like, "You're the guitar player." Yeah. He said, "Man, you played so much guitar, it's frightening." And I said, "Well, I said, well, you don't know how much it means." And he kind of cut me off. He's like, "Frightening." And, we stood there, we kind of shot the shit for a few minutes, and it kind of turned into an SNL skit because he was just so James Brown, like.
Doesn't get any more James Brown than James Brown.
Yeah, like I was like, "Man, can you believe how hot it is down here? Like the heat is unbelievable." And he's like, "Yeah, I need a shower," I was like, "Okay, this is too much. You're fucking with me, aren't you?" And so I just said, I said, "Well, look, we'll let you get back to your thing, but like, this is better than meeting the president for me. I mean, we'll never forget this." And shook my hand, and he kind of looked at me again, and he just goes, "Frightening."
What was your band at the time?
That was a thing. That was something called Rana, Rana, and we toured around a lot in the 2000 aughts. We it was a 4-piece rock band, and we did all sorts of stuff. We came really close to like the tipping point, so to speak, to being able to do it. But we opened for everybody down south. We were opening for everybody. Like our booking agency was based out in Nashville, so they put us on bills with like Leonard Skinner and Avril Lavigne, when Avril Lavigne was like a huge thing. And we opened for Widespread Panic down there. We played side stages. We did them. We came close.
Was that instrumental music?
That was not. That had vocals.
Were you singing?
I was one of 3 singers. Yeah.
And will you make a return to more vocal music? Do you think on future material?
Possibly.
To bring it all the way back or all around on the Red House sort of
the Jury. Yeah, right. I mean, maybe I play in a pretty popular thing called Joe Russo's Almost Dead that I do sing. I'm one of the 2 singers in the band, and that's plenty of vocalizing for me for the time being. Um,
How it's their Grateful Dead interpretations.
mhm.
How what kind of liberties are you guys taking?
All the liberties.
All the liberties.
That's the secret of the band. One man's opinion. That's what sets it apart from everything else. And I think it's also that we take every liberty. We are not precious about any bit of that music.
Do you People are precious about that band and they have very particular
Mm-hmm.
favorites and they're like, no man, 78, whatever. I got the board tape.
It's
Um,
unbelievable. I mean, I was not in touch with that scene, the Grateful Dead scene, before this band, really, and I am continually 7 years into it, amazed at the that element of it that you're describing.
do you guys catch heat for being unfaithful? Uh, what unfaithful servant? For being
Right,
so
for doing our own thing with it.
yeah.
No, I not that I know. I mean, I'm sure that there's haters out there because that scene is very opinionated, and that's sort of part of the spirit of the whole community.
Right.
That everybody's voice is important, but I don't really know. I don't know if we catch heat, but I do know that I think that we've had enough feedback from a lot of the original members of the band and people who were associated with the band that they see in us something very similar in spirit to what the initial thing was about. Because those guys were like super punk rock about breaking musical rules and just saying fuck it
Sure.
and just seeing what comes out, and that's what we're doing.
What what kind of musical boot camp did you go through to? I mean, there's a lot of songs. Do you
Forget
guys
it.
have?
Oh, forget it. I mean, I think
Are you?
the book that we're at now is that band has played two or three, 200 and change songs. Um, None of which I knew
Right.
before this thing started. So there was a musical boot camp. That's a good way to say it. I have a binder in the back that's about it looks like somebody's like it looks like a phone book, and it's all the
Right.
charts that I was frantically making for the first 3 years of that band because well, I wasn't familiar with the material. The material does not play itself. Like
No.
it's fairly involved music. And three, the catch 22 of that band was that it got so popular so quickly that the first time that we were playing songs was in front of 3,000, 4,000 people. So it
That's a
didn't feel
great
like,
problem.
oh, I mean, I'll take it. I'm not complaining, but it just happened so unexpectedly. And so you never got like I never felt like that we ever had trial runs where we could really, the trial runs are in real time at pretty big
Right.
shows.
So taking on that body of work and not trying to just reproduce it, how, how much how much of the original stuff, I mean, I guess how much has that affected the way you play guitar? Or did you just say these are the chords and we're going to do it and I'm just going to be me?
That is
So none.
none.
0 out of 10.
I would say 0 out of 10.
I got to check this out.
Well, I mean, I think that's sort of a thing. I don't know. I mean, Joe. First of all, the band was just going to be a one-off, but the reaction to it was so crazy. I've never seen anything like it. That we did that one gig in 2013, and by the end of 2013, we're like, we kind of have to do this again because everywhere each of us were going, people were asking about the gig and saying how like they've listened to the tape over and over and all this stuff. but it goes back to what we were first sort of talking about. It's like I showed up and it was a songbook, but I was bringing John Zorn from Leonard Street to it. I was like, cool. Oh, there's like a free improvisation thing. Awesome. We're going to do, that. Not what I thought. We're not trying to do what the Dead did, because I don't really know what they did still.
Did you ever? You were young. Did you see them?
No, I had my opportunity.
Dylan was with them. I thought maybe your parents took him out.
For sure, no, for sure, it was a possibility. But my one chance, I went to the Spectrum in '94, and I made it as far as the parking lot, and then I traded my tickets in the lot for some other stuff, and
such discretion.
And so that was my one. That was the one show that I would have seen. And had I known it was going to be such a big part of my life, I certainly would have gone in. But what are you going to do?
I saw them 3 times.
Did you?
All that era. Not their best work.
Right. Sure.
But I got great drugs at the shows.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you did. I mean, it's such a unique thing. It's just the whole bubble that world lives in. It's just such its own
How much
thing.
of that? How much of that bleeds over into your guys' shows? Like the same folks as the parking lot?
Dude, I mean, you wouldn't believe it.
The
it's
whole
like
thing.
If we're in LA, or if we're in Florida, or if we're in Maine or Montana, I'm pretty much playing to the same 40 or 50 people in front of me every show. And then there's X amount of other people at the venue.
Have you walked through the parking lot? Is there like a peace sign quarter, like a quarter?
It's
a thing, and
there's a scene.
Goo balls, all of it?
I don't know how in depth it is. I'm a little scared to go out there.
Do you think there's kind burritos?
I think there might be some pretty kind burritos out there.
That's amazing.
Some heady burritos, I think.
I love that.
No, we've really, I mean, the fan base has been, to say that we're lucky guys is a total understatement, right. I mean, the appreciation, and then, that just crosses over to like how open-minded the crowd is, that all of our own projects, the fans of JRAD are willing to give it a chance, like they support everything that we do. It's amazing.
Do you think that there's another band that project could be revolving around their material? Zappa, maybe.
Right? There are bands that do it. I don't think the Grateful Dead is such an American culture thing at this point. It's like a part of American culture or something, that I don't think that there's any other band from the States that could even come close, or that could sustain a thing like that.
Earlier,
we're just like 5 guys from Jersey, 4 guys from Jersey, 1 guy from Philly, that were kind of like, I don't know, we're just going to play some shit. We're going to do our thing over this stuff.
Earlier, you mentioned that you were into Black Flag. You were a Black Flag fan as a youth.
Oh, sure.
Greg Ginn is a Deadhead. Did you know that?
I did know that. Someone told me that.
Has he been out to see you guys?
No, but we're getting to the point now where I would feel comfortable like inviting people like that, who are sort of closeted or not closeted right. Deadheads, because how cool would that be? Like, we're going to play Franklin's Tower, and Greg Ginn's going to sit in with us. Come on,
right?
Let's have that sit in.
I wonder how that would go.
Oh, it'd be great. I mean, we would, that's the thing about our thing, is that we just don't. I don't know how much we think about how would that go over, how would that work. We just, like, if we think it's cool, we do it, and then
right,
it just seems to be working.
And is it a traditional lineup? keys, couple guitars,
Keys, couple of guitars. I
bass,
think the
drums.
one thing that we really stray from is that me and Tom Hamilton, the other guitar player, we both spend time in the lead guitar seat.
Wait a minute, the other guy's name is Tom Hamilton?
It is
That's rad.
Aerosmith, right? Yeah.
You couldn't do it with their material. Although I stand by Love in an Elevator, one of their top 10 songs.
It holds up. It holds. I like the '70s stuff when they all look like they were about to die on stage. But that's always the band's sweet spot, right?
I think so.
Most
like near death. Near death experiences inspire, great writings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say again, I love the record. I'm going to tell everyone about it because it's fucking fantastic. And this pandemic stuff sucks, but a lot of great things have come out of it, and this is one of them. So congratulations on your first solo release.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you so much. You got to find the silver linings these days when you can.
I mean, a platinum lining would be killer, but I'll settle for silver.
My man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. This was really a pleasure.
We took a lot of, this is my style. I appreciate you playing along.
I'm into it, man. I'm in. Sign me up.
I'm going to stop this thing and let's let this